Did something happen to you out there? Send your story to us. It could become one of our next nightmares.
Dude, hold up. Seriously, stop whatever you're doing right now and listen to what I'm about to tell you. Because if you ignore this, you might be making the exact same mistake that almost cost 5 people their lives. Do you work in an office? You ever stayed late by yourself after everyone left? Then you need to hear this. There's this corporate building here in the States where something so messed up happened that the 12th floor was literally sealed off. They didn't renovate it, they didn't re-rent it. It's just shut forever. And man, once you find out why, you'll totally get why 3 security guards quit on the spot that night and never worked a graveyard shift again in their lives. But let me tell you the creepiest part. It all started exactly the way it probably already happened to you. You know that weird noise you hear and then pretend you didn't? That feeling like someone's watching you, but when you look, no one's there? That door you swore you closed but now is open again. Yeah, those people ignored it too. And that was the biggest mistake of their lives. Because look, we always try to be logical about this stuff, right? Oh, it's just the wind. The building is just old. I'm tired. I'm probably seeing things. We do that so we don't have to face a much darker truth. What if it's none of that? What if there's something seriously wrong going on and you're just choosing to ignore it until it's too late? Look, I'm going to give you a little spoiler just so you don't go anywhere. What the cleaning crew found on that 12th floor makes 0 sense. It just does not make sense. There were police investigations, forensics, experts trying to explain it. And to this day, nobody can. Some people ended up in the hospital. Some developed a phobia of high rises. Some people were just never the same again. And the part that's going to totally wreck your head? The explanation for all of this is buried in something that happened 20 years ago. Something that was hushed up with a ton of money, a lot of influence, and a lot of threats. Something that was supposed to stay forgotten. But it came back. And it came back with a vengeance. Stay with me, because in the next few minutes you're going to find out what actually happened that Tuesday night when the cleaning crew went up to the 12th floor, and why only 3 of those 5 people ever came back down. Why the security cameras were cut exactly 47 minutes before it all started. And who or what turned them off. And most importantly, what's the red flag you need to recognize in your office before it's too late? Because I'm telling you, after this story, you're never going to look at an empty hallway at work the same way again. You're never going to ignore that weird noise, and you're never going to think it's just my imagination. So take a deep breath, because what you're about to hear is real. It's documented. And it is absolutely terrifying. It all started back in 2019 in one of those massive office buildings in downtown Chicago. You know the type, right? Those glass and steel towers, super modern, packed with tech companies, consulting firms, startups. Places we always associate with the future, progress, and safety. Nothing to do with horror stories, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. The Riverside corporate tower had 20 floors, all occupied by different companies. All of them. Except one. The 12th floor had been closed for 3 years. Officially, the reason was structural renovations. But man, seriously, 3 years for a renovation? Nobody really questioned it because, well, everyone had their own deadlines to worry about. The night cleaning crew avoided that floor. It's not like it was forbidden to clean there, but it just didn't make sense to waste time in an empty place, you know. until the building management hired a new facilities company and demanded a full cleaning of every single floor. No exceptions. Jessica was the supervisor of that crew. A practical, down-to-earth woman, mother of 2, who had been doing that job for over 10 years. She told me personally what happened, and man, you could see it in her eyes that it had left a mark. It wasn't exaggeration, it wasn't drama. It was real deal trauma. The first night her crew had to clean the 12th floor, things got weird right off the bat. The elevator doors took longer than usual to open when they hit that floor. When they finally did, a blast of ice-cold air rushed out, even though the building's AC was supposed to be off at that hour. Jessica remembers thinking, that's weird, but it's probably just my imagination. The floor was completely empty. No furniture, no cubicles, nothing. Just that cold floor and those massive windows showing the city below. The lighting was that basic fluorescent office stuff that would flicker every now and then. Jessica split the crew, 3 people to clean, and her supervising. That's when it started. First, it was the sound. A dragging noise, like someone was pulling a heavy chair across the floor. But there were no chairs. Jessica went to check and the sound stopped. She walked back to the other side of the floor, and it started again. This happened about 4 times until one of the workers, Robert, said what everyone was thinking. "Boss, is someone messing with us?" Jessica, always the rational one, said it must be sound from another floor echoing through the building structure. There's even a scientific explanation for that, you know? It's called structural noise transmission. In high-rises, especially older ones that went through renovations, sound can travel through concrete beams and pipes, creating the illusion that it's coming from exactly where you are. So she tried to calm the crew down with that. But then Carla, another worker, screamed from the far end of the hallway. When they got there, she was pale, pointing at the wall. There was a mark in the drywall, like someone had dragged their fingers across it with force, leaving 5 vertical gashes. But that wall had been recently painted, according to management. The paint still had that strong, new smell. Probably just some worker messing around before they moved out, Jessica tried to rationalize. But she didn't even believe it. Those marks were too deep, and there was something about them that looked desperate. Like someone had clawed at the wall with everything they had. The crew kept cleaning, but the vibe was tense. That's when they noticed something that made everyone's stomach drop. Footprints in the dust on the floor. Adult-sized barefoot prints that Apia read out of nowhere in the middle of the hallway and disappeared near the window. There was no door, no opening, nothing to explain how someone could have gotten there. Robert pulled out his phone to take a photo. The second he framed the footprints on his camera, the screen started glitching. He tried again, same thing. Then he recorded a video. And when he watched it later, there was this weird interference. A static that almost sounded like a voice. He never showed that video to anyone outside the crew, but Jessica heard it. She said it sounded like someone whispering help over and over again. There's a possible explanation for that too. Okay. Auditory pareidolia is when our brain tries to find familiar patterns like words and random sounds. It's the same thing that makes us see faces in power outlets. But even knowing that, Jessica said that audio was different. It had intent, urgency. And then something happened that no one expected. Carla was cleaning near the windows when she suddenly dropped her cloth and just froze, staring fixedly at the glass. Jessica called her name 3 times before she responded. When she finally turned around, tears were streaming down her face. "I saw him," she said, trembling. "There was a man looking in, from outside the window. Guys, we are talking about the 12th floor. There's no balcony, no ledge, nothing. Just a 130-foot drop to the pavement. Robert and Jessica ran to the window, but there was nothing there. Just the reflection of the city." But Carla swore on her life. She swore she saw a man in a suit, barefoot, looking in with an expression she couldn't even describe. It wasn't anger, it wasn't sadness. It was a void, a total void. They decided to finish the job fast and get the hell out of there. But when they went to the elevator, it wouldn't respond. They hit the button, nothing. They tried the intercom, nothing. The elevator simply wouldn't come to the 12th floor. They had to use the emergency stairs, and the stairs were where things got truly terrifying. The stairwell door was heavy, heavier than it should have been. When they finally forced it open, a strong smell of mold and something else, something rotting, hit them. The lights in the stairwell were flickering irregularly, creating that strobe effect that makes everything look like a horror movie. They started heading down, but halfway between the 12th and 11th floor, Carla stopped dead. "Do you guys hear that?" she asked. Everyone went silent. And then, they heard it clearly. Footsteps combing down the stairs above them. Fast, barefoot footsteps hitting the concrete. But when they looked up, nobody was there. The footsteps kept coming, getting closer and closer. And there was more. Heavy breathing, like someone running in total desperation. Jessica told everyone to run, and they bolted. But no matter how fast they went, those invisible footsteps were always right behind them, just a few steps away. And then, the thing that almost gave Robert a heart attack happened. He felt something grab his shoulder. It wasn't a light touch, it was a cold, desperate hand. He screamed and threw himself down the stairs, almost taking Jessica with him. When they looked back for a split second, Jessica swears to this day, they saw a silhouette. Someone barefoot in a suit, moving wrong. The movements weren't natural. They were too fast, too jerky. When they finally hit the ground floor and burst through the door, they literally ran out of the building. The night security guard was shocked, but when they tried to explain, he just shook his head and said something that made everything worse. "You heard them too, huh? You're not the first." They found out later that other cleaning crews had reported weird stuff on that floor. One former employee had a panic attack so severe she had to be hospitalized. Another worker swore he saw a person's silhouette in the windows, even when the floor was empty. But management always hushed it up, always had a rational explanation, and always told people to keep quiet so they wouldn't scare the tenants. Jessica didn't go back the next day. She asked never to clean that floor again, and eventually the company agreed. But curiosity is a powerful thing. She started researching the building, especially that specific floor. And that's when she found the truth. In 1997, 22 years before those events, the 12th floor was occupied by a financial consulting firm. And there worked a guy named Michael Patterson, a 28-year-old junior analyst. Michael was under massive pressure at work. He'd just been chewed out for results he couldn't deliver. He was in debt, and he was going through a severe depression that nobody around him noticed. One Friday, after everyone had gone home, Michael went up to the 12th floor and he jumped. The case was hushed up back then. The family was compensated, the company settled, everything was swept under the rug. But there's a detail that makes everything click. Before he jumped, Michael tried to take it back. Witnesses in the building across the street said they saw someone through the windows, clawing at the wall, leaving marks, trying to pull themselves away from the edge. But the depression, that voice in your head that lies to you, it won. And according to the report, Michael was barefoot when he was found. He had taken his shoes off beforehand, which is common in these cases. A last-moment attempt to feel something real before the end. The floor was closed shortly after, officially for renovations. But the truth was that it was impossible to keep employees there. Everyone felt something wrong, that heavy energy, that sadness that seemed to soak into the walls. The building was finished in 1985. The architect, a guy named Richard Kleinman, was known for being obsessed with sacred geometry and energy architecture. Basically, he believed that the shape and layout of buildings could capture or amplify certain energies. The 12th floor had something unique. The layout of the windows, the beams, the ventilation. It all formed a specific pattern. Kleinman never publicly explained the design, but in an obscure interview Jessica found, he said something disturbing. Some spaces are like amplifiers. They take what's in CD of people and multiply it, for better or for worse. Kleinman died in 1993, 4 years before Michael jumped. But before he died, he tried to buy that floor from the building owners. He offered 3 times the market value. When they asked why, he just said, "Because I did something I shouldn't have, and I need to undo it." The offer was rejected, and Kleinman died without ever undoing whatever he had done. Jessica's story is just one of many, and the 12th floor is just one of thousands of places holding similar secrets. So next time you're alone in the office after hours, pay attention to that weird noise, to that sudden chill, to that feeling that you aren't completely alone, because maybe you aren't. But more importantly, pay attention to the people around you. To that coworker who's been quieter lately. To the person who always stays late and always looks exhausted. Because the real horror story isn't ghosts. It's how many people are suffering in silence every day, in every office, without anyone noticing. Until it's too late. If you or someone you know is struggling, please reach out. In the US, call or text 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. So do you still think that noise in the empty hallway is just your imagination?